in the Gospel we notice that it is to the interiorized and tranquil soul that the manifestation comes, whereas the official experts miss the boat, miss the grace. This hidden soul, Anna, and also Simeon, who are living in prayer mode day and night, are able to be worked upon by the Spirit of their God. This week is a week of much noise. One cannot but observe how energy is going from the interior to the exterior. Often, yes, it's true, in order to celebrate well, but in actual practice, one feels that perhaps sometimes in our Western society, one would celebrate in the true meaning of the word better, with more simplicity, with more time for the interior, where things happen only with difficulty if the energy is on the exterior, which also is what we find in the first reading, a warning actually. Love not the world, or the things that are in the world, says St. John. And he goes on to say why. They are linked with desire, pride, and in actual fact, the person who is in some way limiting his joy and bliss to acquiring and apparently owning something outside his own soul is condemning himself to profound frustration. Indeed, even in the child, one sees for a while a certain gratification when the wanted present arrives, and then, bit by bit, one notices how it wears off, leaving space for greater and deeper desires, feeding that artificial illusion that joy is outside. The Christian soul is, if living truly the life of grace, sufficient within his soul, self-sufficient in God, on God, a quite different optic. The correct attitude of the Christian soul is receptivity and submission, gratitude and awe. I don't deserve a thing. And so it's all a plus, a bonus. In the first instance, and it's what we think of at the end of this year, time itself, we have no right over one moment of time. If one goes to a graveyard, one finds often people who have had very little time, babies, children, and so on. They came and went. In the war years, people had very little if they were males. In our area, we were burying a neighbour one time, some years ago, in the local graveyard, and I was with a person who since has died himself, but who had been in the RAF, and I was puzzled by just a series of graves all the same in one line, with RAF signature on them, and he explained what it was. These were training here in North Wales. It's still there, actually, the base, the RAF base in the valley opposite us in Anglesey. And he was explaining how when they trained, things weren't exactly as sophisticated as they came to be afterwards. And so things could go wrong. And he explained in euphemistic terms that these had all, no doubt, gone into what used to be called amongst themselves thick cloud. That meant they went into a cloud and ended up in Snowdonia. So that was the end of only a trainee without even facing the war itself. And others in the RAF found they had it very hard to land on aircraft carriers, and many were lost in the landing on those aircraft carriers, and so on. And indeed, another neighbour of ours, her husband was truncated in his 30s, not during the fighting of the Falklands War, but just by accident when two helicopter blades hit each other in the air. And so life can be short and leave a whole family devastated forevermore. Indeed, near our monastery in Italy, we had all these traces of widows who had lost husbands in the war and remained 50 years and so on, widows. One we know was a friend of the monastery, and she had lost her husband at the age of about 20. And what happened there was that they'd found him, the Germans, with 2 grenades in his pocket. And immediately they shot him in the head, and we know where. So again, life truncated before really having started. A reminder that therefore we are the lucky ones. We have right now time in our hands, apparently for another year. But as they say in football, when it comes to a dramatic match, we're now in extra time. We're all actually in extra time because we have no right over 1 second. And it can just be flicked out like that, like a candle. Often through a skid, often through a moment of distraction. Something unexpected and unprogrammed happens and changes the course of history. A soul goes on, and there's no coming back. So in that sense, the first gift is that of life, for which we give thanks. And then, within that, everything that comes to us is a bonus. And we can find peace to some extent if we abdicate over this false notion of owning and having rights. This house that we are about to bless is something which gratis comes to us from the giver of all, for which we give thanks and hand over as his and ask him to reign upon it and keep it a place of peace where no unpleasant word or any unpleasant odour, as it were, may be emitted from any soul, that other souls also will feel something here, and also that unpleasant beings may not be allowed to come here either through television or through unpleasant contacts, but this will be a place where the angels will be at home. Therefore we ask that in concrete terms we avoid any word which might hurt, any word which actually might hurt the angels, e.g. bad words. But that would be your case, but it's a whole making over of this part of the world that in a sense you do have authority over. In French they say charbonnier est roi chez lui. A miner is king in his own house. So this is our prayer, and it is good to remember that this year will actually pass, as indeed the last year is now running out. We were 12 months ago standing at this point last year as well in some celebration, and we were thinking, how will it go? It went this way and irreversibly this way. So too this next year will go some way and some way irreversibly. But we can limit the damage by making sure that we don't let it run awry, that is, without milestones and pauses. Why is this life so full of care? We have no time to stand and stare. It is those pauses that actually give perspective, and if they're not there, time goes too quickly, and we go too quickly with it.